In interviews, vague answers may be costing you the job. Hi, I'm Shelley Piedmont, a former recruiter turned career coach, and I want you to thrive and not just survive your job. I would say, as a former recruiter, about every other interviewee was giving me vague answers. And even when I prompted them, can you provide more detail? Can you be more specific? Oftentimes I got nothing. I would get just essentially the same vague story. And I could not, in good conscience, then move them to a hiring manager to talk with when I wasn't sure that they were qualified for the role, because I couldn't get a sense whether they actually did the things that they were talking about. It was so vague that maybe they were making it up as they were going. I couldn't tell. And when there is that doubt, that was problematic for the person. You know, hiring is a risky business. It is. You are bringing someone on board, you have a job for them to do, and you are taking a risk that they actually can do it and do it well. And when somebody isn't a good fit for the role, then we have lower productivity. That hurts the team, that hurts the business. You've got lost training dollars, and especially if they don't get along with their teammates, you have morale problems. So hiring teams want to reduce the risk that they have in hiring. Part of the way that they can do that is to understand specifically what that person has done and see if it aligns to what they would expect the person to do on the job. Vague answers don't do that for the hiring team. That is why when you answer questions in a vague way, you are hurting yourself in the interview process. And for many of you, that's why you're not moving forward. If you like this, hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe to my channel. It really helps. So now I'm going to give you a technique to help you be more specific, and I'm going to show you two examples. One that is vague and one that is specific. And you tell me which one is better. So let's start by looking at a job description. I want to talk about what you need to do with that job description. So here's a job description for a senior accountant, accounts receivable. And this is pretty typical of job descriptions where you've got a job responsibility area as well as a qualifications area. And under that are different bullet points of things that are important for this job. So what you want to do is read through a job description as you're preparing for an interview and get a sense of what are the things that they think are important that you need to have to be successful. So what you're going to do is for each bullet point, you're going to come up with two stories. One about collection overhaul and one about cash flow fix. And in these bullet points, you can see it says STAR. That stands for situation, the S, task, the T, action, the A, and result, the R. And what you want to do is just bullet point out a star story for each of these scenarios. Doesn't have to be lengthy, but you just want to understand that story and all the aspects of that story, because you want to tell a complete story and you want to have that interviewer be able to see you actually doing what you're talking about. So that's an example here. Now I want to give an example of where vagueness hurts you. So let's take the example of a question you might get around that first example. So can you tell me about a time you improved the collections process or helped reduce outstanding receivables? Important to them because that is an important duty, right? So here is an example of vagueness. And I want you to see that there's very little specificity to this, and it would really be hard to say that anybody who applied for this position couldn't have the same story. So let me read that. Sure, I was part of the team working on collections when we had some overdue accounts. We noticed that some payments were behind, so we started following up more regularly with clients. I worked closely with the accounts receivable team to make sure reminders were sent out, and we also tried to reach out by phone if needed. At one point, we discussed ways to streamline the process, and I helped with some of the follow-up to ensure that clients were aware of the outstanding balances. We were definitely more on top of it, and I think it made a difference in getting some payments in sooner. Okay, so we have some talk about a process here, but we don't have really any specifics. We don't really know much about the situation. We don't know specifics about what the person actually did, and we certainly don't have anything about a result except it seemed like it worked. Okay, that's where a lot of people get into trouble in interviews. This is very typical of the type of answer often that is given, and then the person wonders why they're not moving forward in the process. That's because this does not reduce the risk of hiring you. No one can tell exactly what you did. So how do they know that you are qualified? So here's an example of a much improved answer to that question. It is way more specific. You can visualize the person doing this. And this story is not a story that virtually anybody else who was applying for this position would have. This is unique to this individual. So let's go through the parts here. So you have this situation. This is where the person who's being interviewed talks about they were first in the role, where they walked into this problem that they had over 500K in overdue receivables, and the days sales outstanding was consistently over 60 days. This impacted the cash flow and it made it difficult for operations. They knew something had to happen and quickly. So that was the situation. This person's goal was to reduce the aging receivables by 40% within 3 months to improve cash flow and stabilize operations. So a specific thing they were required to do. Then we get to the actions. And you notice the actions are the biggest part of this answer. We just need a little bit to set up the situation, talk about the task, but what the recruiter or the hiring manager is really interested in what you've done. And so in this section, it's more about what happened in terms of the activity that this person did. They implemented a structured collections process. They looked at overdue accounts. They set up a schedule for follow-up calls and emails, making sure there was a clear communication trail with clients. To tackle the issues more effectively, they collaborated closely with the sales team. They talked about why they got the sales team involved. And with this person together with the sales team, they worked out a solution to address the issue promptly. There's a lot of collaboration in there. They also ensured that the sales team were proactive in reminding clients about payments. And in addition to that, they updated the invoicing process to be clearer and more consistent, ensuring the clients knew exactly when payments were due and what they owed. They also introduced an early payment incentive, encouraging clients to pay more quickly. So all of the actions that the person did, it wasn't long, but it only gave the details that were relevant to the question that was asked. Didn't go into tangents, anything like that. Then we get to the results. So they had a reduction of 55% in overdue receivables. That boosted the cash flow by over 300K. That helped their financial position and helped them have cash to invest. That is a good answer, a specific answer to this question. And I can guarantee you, between the two answers, this one would be the one that would get the interviewer's attention. So now you can see why you may not be doing well in your interviews. If your examples are more like the first and not the second one, then you are not painting the picture that you are qualified for the job. So next time you're in an interview, follow this process, come up with your stories, and then you will have an easier time convincing that interviewer as you're talking about what you actually did that you actually are the best person for the role. If you are interested in help with your interviews, I do interview prep sessions, and you will find information about that in the description.